I came home from deployment 3 weeks early and found my roommate packing everything she owned into boxes in my bedroom. At first, I thought she was leaving because of me. Then I saw the child's backpack beside my bed, the family court envelope in her hand, and a drawing taped to my wall that said, "Welcome home, Caleb." Rowan looked at my uniform, went completely pale, and whispered, "You weren't supposed to see this." But I stood in the doorway with my duffel still hanging from one shoulder, trying to decide which question deserved to come out first. Who was her? Why was there a pink suitcase under my desk? And why did my room look like a 7-year-old had taken possession of it during a hostile but highly organized takeover? There were small sneakers lined up beneath the window. A stuffed rabbit sat against my pillow. 3 cardboard boxes had been stacked beside the dresser, each labeled in Rowan's handwriting. Sophie, see clothes. Sophie A, books. Sophie, things that break easily. The last one had been underlined twice. Rowan lowered the court envelope behind her leg, as if I had somehow missed it. I had not. 8 months overseas had taught me to notice hands before faces, exits before furniture, and anything someone tried too hard to keep out of sight. It had not taught me what to do when the person hiding something was Rowan Hayes. She had been my roommate for almost 2 years, which meant she knew I hated decorative pillows, slept badly after night flights, and kept emergency chocolate in the freezer behind a bag of peas no one had touched since we moved in. I knew she took her coffee black when she was tired and ruined it with vanilla syrup when she was worried. I knew she sang quietly while cleaning, but only songs she claimed to hate. I knew she worked impossible hours as a pediatric nurse and still stopped to move worms off the sidewalk after rain. I also knew she had spent the last month answering my calls with the camera angled too high, as if she did not want me seeing the rest of the apartment. I had blamed the connection. Standing there, I realized the connection had been fine. "You're early," she said. 3 weeks. I can count. "You sound disappointed." Her face tightened. "That is not what this is." I let the duffel slide to the floor. The buckle struck the hardwood hard enough to make her flinch. That bothered me more than it should have. Rowan did not scare easily. I had once watched her hold pressure on a stranger's bleeding arm outside a grocery store, while ordering me to find clean towels and stop looking like I was about to arrest the shopping carts. Now she was gripping a paper envelope so tightly that one corner had folded into her palm. I pointed toward it. "Family court?" She glanced down. Apparently, she had forgotten she was still holding it. "Caleb, that usually means yes. This is not a conversation we should have in the hallway. This is my bedroom. I'm aware. You put a stuffed rabbit in my bed. It is not permanent." The answer came too quickly. I looked at the boxes again. Every one of them was sealed. They were not half-packed or waiting to be sorted. They were sealed, labeled, and ready to leave. A set of keys sat on my dresser beside a folded rental brochure. I could see the photograph on the front. A narrow brick apartment building with blue doors and a playground squeezed between 2 parking lots. Rowan moved in front of it. That told me more than anything she had said. "You signed another lease?" "No." "But you were going to." She crossed her arms, trapping the envelope against her ribs. "You just got home. And you were leaving. You have been awake for how long?" "Long enough to understand boxes." Her jaw shifted. That was the look she used when a doctor said something stupid within hearing distance of a nurse who knew better. Usually, I enjoyed that look. Tonight, it felt like a door closing. I took a breath and tried again. Is someone in trouble? The question changed her. The irritation and defensiveness left her face. What remained looked like exhaustion held upright by habit. She glanced toward the hallway behind me, not toward the front door. Toward the bathroom and the second bedroom. Someone else was in the apartment. My body reacted before my thoughts did. My shoulders tightened, and my attention moved through every sound around us. The hum of the air conditioner. Traffic several floors below. A soft creak from the hallway. Rowan noticed. Caleb, no one is going to hurt you. I didn't ask if someone was going to hurt me. No, but you got that look. What look? The one where you start planning how to get everyone out through the nearest window. We're on the 4th floor. Exactly why I need you to stop planning. I looked at the child's backpack again. A plastic keychain shaped like a yellow star hung from the zipper. One point had been repaired with clear tape. Who is Sophie? Rowan's eyes closed for 1 second. When they opened again, she looked less afraid of my reaction and more afraid of what telling me would make real. Before she could answer, a small voice came from behind me. Rowan. I turned slowly. A little girl stood at the end of the hallway in purple pajamas, holding the stuffed rabbit's missing blanket against her chest. Her dark hair had been braided badly on one side and not at all on the other. She looked from Rowan to my uniform, then down to the duffel at my feet. Her eyes widened. You're Caleb. It was not a question. I looked at Rowan. She had gone completely still. The girl took one cautious step closer. Are you the soldier from all her stories? The question landed harder than it should have. Not because she knew my name. Because she knew enough about me to recognize me before I had said a word. I looked at Rowan. She looked at Sophie. Sophie looked pleased with herself, which told me she had no idea she had just walked into the middle of something complicated. Apparently, I said, I have stories. Sophie nodded. A lot. Rowan rubbed one hand over her face. They are not all about you. Are any of them bad? Sophie considered this with the seriousness of someone reviewing evidence. You burned grilled cheese. That happened once. 3 times, Rowan said. I stared at her. You kept count? I lived through the smoke alarm. Sophie smiled. It was small, but it changed her whole face. Then she seemed to remember she was standing in front of a stranger in a military uniform, because the smile disappeared and her fingers tightened around the blanket. I lowered myself slowly until I was closer to her height. Hi, Sophie, I'm Caleb. I know. Right, the stories. She nodded again. Up close, I could see that one of her braids had been redone recently, probably after she slept on it. Rowan had tried. The result looked like a rope argument. Sophie studied the patch on my chest, then the dust on my boots. Did you come from the airport? Eventually. Did you come from the war? Rowan's eyes flicked to mine. I could tell. She wanted to interrupt. Maybe protect me from the question, or protect Sophie from the answer. I appreciated both impulses. Neither was necessary. I came from a place where I was working with the army, I said. Was it scary? Sometimes. She accepted that without asking for details. Children had a strange way of knowing when an answer had reached its edge. Her attention shifted to my duffel. Did you bring chocolate? I glanced at Rowan. That seems like classified information. You always bring chocolate, Sophie said. I looked at Rowan again. She raised both hands. I may have mentioned the chocolate. A lot? Sophie answered for her 4 times. I'm learning some things about your storytelling habits. Poisson moved as if she was fighting a smile. Then Sophie yawned so hard her eyes watered. Rowan stepped forward immediately. You should be in bed. I was in bed. In the other room. I heard the bag. That was Caleb. I know. Sophie looked at me once more, then at Rowan. Is he mad? The room went quiet. I saw Rowan's face change. So did Sophie. She had not meant to ask something dangerous. She had simply asked the question children ask when they think the stability of the room depends on an adult's mood. I knew that question. I had asked versions of it when I was young. Not out loud. I had been too careful for that. No, I said. I'm confused, but I'm not mad at you. Sophie looked relieved, but only partly. Are you mad at Rowan? Rowan opened her mouth. I answered first. I'm still figuring out what happened. That means yes, Sophie said. It means he is trying not to say yes, Rowan told her. Helpful, I said. You wanted honesty. I wanted an explanation. You have been home for 9 minutes. 10 now. Sophie looked between us. Do you always talk like this? Yes, we said at the same time. That brought the smile back. Rowan crouched beside her and adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Come on, I'll take you back to bed. Sophie did not move. Can Caleb come? Rowan's gaze lifted to mine. There was a question in it, but not the one Sophie had asked. She was asking whether this was too much. Whether seeing the child had already turned the situation into something I had not agreed to. Whether I needed an exit she could pretend was for my benefit. I can come, I said. Rowan searched my face for another second, then stood. Sophie led the way down the hallway. The second bedroom used to be our office. I knew that before I reached the door because the old printer table was still against the wall, but everything else had changed. A narrow bed had replaced the desk. Paper stars hung from the ceiling on clear thread. A nightlight shaped like a moon glowed near the floor. Children's books filled the bottom shelf of the bookcase, while my field manuals and Rowan's nursing textbooks had been pushed onto the top. There were drawings taped everywhere. A crooked cat. A house with too many windows. 3 stick figures beneath a bright yellow sun. I stopped at that one. The tallest figure wore green and had square shoulders. Caleb was written beneath it in careful block letters. The figure beside him had long brown hair. Rowan. Between them stood a smaller figure holding both their hands. Sophie. My throat tightened before I could stop it. Saw where I was looking. She draws everyone she hears about. You told her enough to put me in the picture. She had space. That is not an answer. It is the answer you are getting while she is awake. Sophie climbed into bed and pulled the blanket up to her chin. The stuffed rabbit was already there, apparently owning more than one blanket. Rowan sat on the edge of the mattress. I stayed near the doorway. Sophie looked at my uniform again. Are you sleeping here tonight? I live here. She glanced at Rowan. Then why are the boxes in his room? Rowan went very still. I had the strange thought that Sophie might be the only person in the apartment willing to ask direct questions. They were temporary, Rowan said. That is what you said about the apartment with the blue doors. I looked at Rowan. She gave Sophie the expression of a woman discovering that 7-year-olds made terrible accomplices. What apartment with blue doors? I asked. Sophie pointed toward the hall. The one in the paper. The rental brochure, I said. Rowan exhaled through her nose. Sophie turned back to me. We were going to live there after the judge says I can stay with Rowan. There it was. Simple enough for a child to say in one sentence. Heavy enough to explain every box in my room. I looked at Rowan. The judge. She nodded once. Sophie's eyes moved between us again. My mom died, she said. No warning. No softened language. Just the fact. Rowan's hand closed over hers. The room seemed to lose all its air. I looked at Sophie's face and understood why Rowan had not corrected her. Some truths were already hard enough without forcing a child to decorate them for an adult. I'm sorry, I said. Sophie looked down at the rabbit. She was Rowan's sister. I know. Rowan's eyes shifted toward me. I had known her sister existed. I had known her name was Emily. I had known they spoke irregularly and fought in a way only sisters who loved each other could manage. I had not known she was sick. I had not known she was gone. How long? I asked quietly. 6 weeks, Rowan said. 6 weeks. I went back through our calls in my head. The one where Rowan had kept the camera aimed at the ceiling. The one where she said she had picked up extra shifts. The one where I asked if she was sleeping and she laughed too quickly. 6 weeks of her sitter being gone. 6 weeks of Sophie living in our apartment. 6 weeks of Rowan handling grief, court papers, school forms, night shifts, and whatever else was inside those sealed boxes. She had told me none of it. Sophie yawned again. Rowan brushed the hair back from her forehead. We can talk in the morning. No, Sophie mumbled. You said we were leaving in the morning. Rowan closed her eyes. I looked at the small bed, the taped drawings, and the backpack waiting beside the door. Then I looked at the woman who had apparently planned an entire new life while I was counting down the days until I came back to the old one. Rowan, I said, keeping my voice low, were you planning to move out before I got home? She did not answer immediately. She tucked the blanket around Sophie's shoulders, kissed her forehead, and waited until the child's eyes closed. Then she stood and walked toward me. Yes, she whispered. I stepped back into the hallway so we would not wake Sophie. Rowan pulled the door almost shut, leaving a narrow line of moon-shaped light across the floor. She has a temporary guardianship hearing tomorrow morning, Rowan said. I found a place near her school. I was going to move the boxes tonight, finish cleaning before the weekend, and leave your key on the counter. I stared at her. You were going to disappear. No, I was going to send you a message. That is not better. It was the only plan that did not make her your responsibility. I looked through the gap in the door at the drawing of 3 people holding hands. Then back at Rowan. You already told her enough about me to put me in her family. Pain moved across Rowan's face. That is exactly why we had to leave. I looked back through the narrow opening in Sophie's door. The drawing was still visible from the hallway. 3 figures holding hands. A child's version of a future Rowan had already decided not to let happen. You thought leaving would fix that? I asked. Rowan folded her arms, but the movement looked less defensive now and more like she was trying to hold herself together. I thought leaving would keep her from getting attached to a life that was never offered. You could have asked me. You were overseas. I had a phone. You had a job that involved people trying to keep you alive. And you had a sister dying. Her face changed. I regretted the words as soon as they left me, not because they were untrue, but because I had thrown them like an accusation. Rowan looked down at the carpet. She did not want people knowing how bad it was. I'm not people. No, she said, you're Caleb. The way she said my name made it sound like that explained everything. Maybe it did. She walked past me into the kitchen, keeping her steps quiet so Sophie would not wake. I followed. The apartment looked familiar until I started noticing everything that did not belong to the life I had left. A plastic cup with cartoon whales sat beside the sink. Children's vitamins stood next to Rowan's coffee. A school calendar had been taped to the refrigerator beneath one of my old deployment photos. There were red circles around 2 dates. Tomorrow's hearing, and another date 3 weeks later. I pointed at the second one. What is that? Lease start. The apartment with the blue doors. Yes. You said you had not signed. I haven't. But you're planning to. If the hearing goes well. And if it doesn't. Rowan opened the refrigerator and stared inside without taking anything out. That depends on what the court decides. I waited. She kept looking at the shelves. Rowan, I don't know. There it was. The first answer she had given me that did not sound prepared. She closed the refrigerator and leaned against it. I have temporary authority right now. School, medical care, daily decisions. Tomorrow is about extending that while they complete the home assessment. They're assessing this apartment. They already started. I looked around. At the small cup, the school papers, the narrow hallway leading to a room that had been converted while I was gone. And nobody thought the other person on the lease should know. I told them you were deployed. That is not the same as telling me. No, it isn't. She did not argue. That made it worse. I pulled out one of the kitchen chairs and sat because my body had started to catch up with the day. The flight, the drive, the shock of seeing her, the child asleep down the hall. All of it settled into my shoulders at once. Rowan noticed. She reached automatically for the cabinet above the sink, took down a glass and filled it with water. Then she stopped halfway across the kitchen, as if she had remembered she was supposed to be leaving me. I held out my hand. She gave me the glass. Thank you. You look terrible. I came home to find my roommate moving out with a child I didn't know existed. You knew she existed. I knew your sister had a daughter. I did not know her daughter had taken over my office. She needed a room. I'm not complaining about the room. You noticed the rabbit. The rabbit was in my bed. That was an emergency. What kind? She had a nightmare. And the rabbit needed tactical relocation. She wanted to sleep in your room. I looked at her. Why? Rowan's eyes moved toward the refrigerator. She asked where the soldier from the pictures slept. That still doesn't answer the question. She thought your room might be safe. The glass paused halfway to my mouth. Rowan seemed to realize what she had said. She turned toward the counter and started straightening papers that were already straight. She has been having trouble sleeping. Because of Emily. Because everything changed in 1 week. Her voice softened when she said it. She went from her mother's house to a hospital waiting room, then to my apartment. Her school changed her pickup records. Her clothes came in trash bags because I did not have boxes yet. She kept asking when her mother was coming back, even after she understood the answer. Rowan pressed her palm flat against the counter. The first few nights, she slept on the floor beside my bed because she thought if she closed her eyes, I might disappear too. I did not know what to say to that. So I said nothing. Rowan finally looked at me. This is what I was trying not to hand you the moment you came home. You think telling me would have handed it to me? Yes. You don't get to decide what I can carry. I was not deciding what you can carry. That is exactly what you were doing. No. Her voice stayed quiet, but the edge returned. I was deciding what I was willing to ask. You didn't ask anything. Because there was no version of that conversation that was fair. I stood. Fair to who? To you. I laughed once, without humor. That is convenient. Her eyes narrowed. You think this was convenient? I think disappearing before I got home meant you never had to hear my answer. She stepped closer. And what answer would that have been? The question stayed between us. I had one, but it had too many parts. Stay. Tell me everything. Let me help. Do not make this apartment feel empty before I have even unpacked. But none of those answers were clean. Each one could sound like pity, or guilt, or the kind of promise a man made when he had been home less than an hour and still had desert dust on his boots. Rowan watched me fail to speak. Her expression softened, though not kindly. That is why, she said. Why what? Why I could not ask. I put the glass down. You decided my silence before I had the chance to give it. I decided you should not come home and discover your life had been rearranged around a court case and a grieving child. It was already rearranged. Yes. And you still thought the honest thing was to leave a key on the counter. I thought the honest thing was to make sure you had a choice, by removing yourself before I got one. Her mouth tightened. I had hit something true. For a few seconds, the only sound in the kitchen was the clock above the stove and the low hum of the refrigerator. Then Rowan reached for the rental brochure on the counter and slid it toward me. The monthly rent was circled. It was more than she could comfortably afford on one salary. I looked at the number, then at her. How many extra shifts? That is not your concern. How many? Enough. Rowan. 4 a month, maybe 5. You're already working nights. I know my schedule. And who watches Sophie? Mrs. Alvarez downstairs said she can help. There is an after-school program. I can move some shifts. You have planned every hour. I had to. You planned rent, childcare, school, court, moving, and work. Yes. But not one conversation with me. Her eyes flashed. I called you every week. You talked about weather and hospital food. Because you sounded tired. I was tired. You sounded worse than tired. That stopped me. Rowan looked away. On your call in June, your hands were shaking. I remembered the paper cup. The bad connection. The night I had told her I was fine until she stopped asking. You noticed. Of course I noticed. And you still said nothing about Emily. She died 2 days later. The anger left the room. Not all at once, but enough. Rowan lowered herself into the chair across from mine. I was going to tell you, she said. Then Sophie came to me, and every conversation became about what needed to happen next. You were counting the days until you came home. I could not be the person who turned those days into a list of problems waiting at the door. I sat again. You are not a list of problems. Her eyes lifted to mine. I had not meant to say it that way. Or maybe I had. She looked down at her hands. This is not just me anymore. I can see that. Sophie needs consistency. I know. No, you know the word. You do not know what it has looked like. Then tell me. I cannot explain 6 weeks in one night. Start with tomorrow. Rowan was quiet. Then she reached for the family court envelope and placed it on the table between us. There is someone else coming to the hearing, she said. Who? She rested 2 fingers on the envelope. Sophie's father. I waited for the rest. Rowan's face told me there was plenty. He has not seen her almost 4 years, she said, and now he wants custody. He wants custody, I repeated. Rowan nodded. The words sounded simple, the kind of sentence that fit neatly inside a court envelope. Nothing about the situation felt neat. Does Sophie know? She knows he is coming tomorrow. That is not what I asked. Rowan looked toward the hallway. She knows Grant is her father. She knows he has not been around. She does not know he is asking the court to place her with him. Why not? Because she is 7. That has not stopped anyone from letting her hear everything else. Her expression hardened. You think I wanted her listening to us argue? I think she already knows enough to believe she is the reason you are losing your home. I am not losing my home. You packed it into boxes. I chose another apartment. You chose an apartment you cannot afford. I can afford it. With 5 extra night shifts and a neighbor watching Sophie. Mrs. Alvarez is not a random neighbor. She helped raise half the children in this building. That does not make your plan sustainable. Rowan pushed her chair back. I did not ask you to review my budget. No, you were going to leave before I could. She stood and gathered the court papers. The top page slipped sideways before she caught it. I saw Grant's full name. Grant Mercer. I had heard it once before, years ago, in the kind of conversation Rowan ended by saying she did not want to talk about it. At the time, I had respected that. Now I wished I had asked one more question. What happened 4 years ago? I said. Rowan kept the papers against her chest. He left. That part I understood. He and Emily were never good together. They were good at apologizing and terrible at changing. There was no bitterness in her voice. That worried me more than anger would have. Grant would disappear for a week, come back with flowers, promise everything would be different, and then disappear again. Emily finally stopped letting him back in, and he stopped seeing Sophie. At first, he called. How often? Enough to upset her. I waited. Then, less, Rowan said. He called on birthdays and Christmas with a few video calls between them. After a while, even those stopped. Did he pay support? Sometimes. That means no. It means sometimes. Why are you defending him? I am not. It sounds like you are. Rowan set the envelope back on the table. I am trying not to turn Sophie's father into a monster because I am angry with him. That is generous. It is necessary. For court? For Sophie. That answer shut me up. Rowan sat again. When she asks about him, I tell her he made choices that hurt people. I do not tell her he never loved her. I do not know that. He had 4 years to show it. I know. And now he appears after Emily dies. I know. Why? Rowan's gaze dropped to the court papers. His mother called him. His mother. She found out about Emily through someone at their old church. Grant came to the funeral. He saw Sophie for the first time since she was 3. How did that go? She hid behind me. I looked toward the hallway again. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet for a conversation involving a child who had already proved. She listened from doorways. Did he speak to her? He tried. What did she do? She asked if he remembered her middle name. I did not ask whether he did. Rowan's face answered. He says he has changed, she continued. He has a steady job now. He has been sober for 19 months. He rents a house outside Fredericksburg. His parents are willing to help. That was more than I wanted him to have. A job would have been easier to dismiss if he had just lost it. Sobriety would have been easier to question if it were only a promise. A house, grandparents, a story about a man who had finally become responsible. Those were the kinds of facts that looked good on paper. What does Rowan Hayes have? I asked. She gave me a tired look. A 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate who is gone most of the year. The sentence hit exactly where she intended. I am not gone most of the year. You were gone 8 months. This time. There will be another time. You don't know that. You signed the paperwork, Caleb. There it was. The thing beneath every box and every prepared answer. Deployment was not an accident that had happened to us. It was part of the life I had chosen. Rowan had built her plan around the likelihood that I would leave again, because pretending otherwise would not help Sophie. What did the home assessor say? I asked. She said the apartment is safe. Sophie has her own room. The school is close. My work schedule is difficult, but manageable if I have reliable childcare. And me? Rowan did not answer. What did you tell her about me? That you are my roommate. That is accurate. That you are in the army. Also accurate. That you were deployed, and I did not know what your schedule would look like when you returned. I leaned back. Sos, I am a problem. You are an uncertainty. Those are close relatives. They are not the same. They look the same in court. Rowan rubbed her forehead. This is why I was trying to move. So the judge would not think I might leave. So the judge would not think Sophie's stability depended on a man who never agreed to be part of it. I stared at her. She held my gaze. That was the first time all night she said the thing plainly. Not that I would be unreliable. Not that I was dangerous. That I had never agreed. You thought the court would assume we were together, I said. I thought they might ask. And what would you say? The truth. Which truth? Her eyes narrowed. That we are roommates. The answer should not have bothered me. It did. I looked down at the paper between us. And Grant's lawyer. He does not have one yet. Yet. His parents are helping him find someone. They want Sophie placed with him. They want their granddaughter. That is not the same thing. I know. Does Grant? Rowan hesitated. That was enough. He is not ready, I said. Maybe not. Maybe? He is trying. He has been trying for how long? 6 weeks. And you have been raising her for 6 weeks while grieving your sister and working nights. Yes. Then why are you talking like the two plans deserve equal weight? Because courts do not only decide who has done the most in the last 6 weeks. I heard the frustration in her voice, but something else was underneath it. Fear. Not vague fear. The kind that came from understanding the rules and still knowing the outcome could hurt you. Emily did not leave instructions, Rowan said. There is no will naming me. No written guardianship plan. She kept believing she would have more time. And Grant is her father. Yes. I hated how much one fact could outweigh 4 years of absence. What happens tomorrow? The judge decides whether to extend the temporary order while they investigate. And if they do not, Sophie could leave with Grant. Tomorrow? Possibly. My chair scraped the floor as I stood. Rowan stood too. Do not do that. Do what? Turn this into a mission. A child might be handed to a man she barely recognizes. I know exactly what might happen. Then we prepare. We are prepared. You were prepared to move into an apartment you cannot afford. And you were prepared to come home, unpack, sleep for 12 hours, and return to the life you left. I stepped closer. That life had you in it. Her face changed. Only for a second. Then she looked away. Caleb, you said I never agreed to be part of this. You didn't. You also never gave me the chance. This is not about us. Every decision you made says it is. She pressed her lips together. I waited for her to deny it. She did not. Instead, she walked to the refrigerator and pulled down the drawing Sophie had made. The tape released with a soft tearing sound. Rowan held it between us. You want to know why she put you in the picture? Yes. Because she asked me who would come if something bad happened. I looked at the 3 figures. And you said me. I said you always come back when someone needs you. The words should have felt like trust. Instead, they felt like a standard I was already afraid of failing. Rowan looked at the green figure Sophie had drawn. I told her stories because she needed to believe someone could leave and still return. Her thumb moved across the paper, smoothing a crease near my name. But stories are easy, she said. Tomorrow, the judge is going to ask what her real life looks like. I cannot answer that with a soldier in a drawing. She placed the picture on the table and walked toward the hallway. I watched her stop outside Sophie's door. For the first time since I came home, I understood why Rowan had packed the boxes. She was not trying to erase me from their future. She was trying to build one that could survive without me. Rowan stayed outside Sophie's door for another minute, listening. Then she turned back toward the kitchen. She's asleep. You're sure? No. That almost made me smile. Almost. Rowan picked up the drawing from the table and pressed the tape flat against one corner. She pretends when she thinks adults are saying things she needs to hear. Smart. Terrifying. You like smart. I like smart when it belongs to patients who cannot hide under furniture. I glanced toward the hallway. Has she done that? Twice. Recently. Today. I looked at the packed boxes again. That might be related. I know. Rowan set the drawing down and started gathering the court papers. Her movements had become slower. She had been holding herself upright since I walked through the door, and now exhaustion was catching her in pieces. The slight tremor in her fingers, the way she leaned one hip against the table, the pause before she bent to pick up a page. I took the papers from her. She resisted for half a second, then let go. You should sleep, I said. So, should you? I slept on the plane. That was not sleep. That was losing consciousness near strangers. It counts. It does not. We can argue about sleep after the hearing. We are not going to the hearing. I looked up. You're not going? I am going. Then we are going. She folded her arms. No. Good discussion. Caleb, I can sit in the hallway. You cannot walk into family court in uniform after showing up 3 weeks early and expect no one to ask questions. I own civilian clothes. Do you know where they are? In my room. Rowan looked toward the boxes. Somewhere in my room. This is not funny. I'm not laughing. You coming could make this harder. Then tell me how. She took a breath. Before she could answer, there was a soft sound from the hallway. A floorboard. Then silence. Rowan and I looked at each other. She walked to Sophie's room and opened the door. The bed was empty. For 1 second, neither of us moved. The moon-shaped nightlight still glowed beside the wall. The blanket had been pushed aside. The stuffed rabbit lay near the pillow. The window was closed. The closet door stood open. Rowan crossed the room in 3 steps and dropped to her knees. Sophie. No answer. She looked under the bed. Nothing. I checked the closet. A row of small dresses hung over 2 plastic storage bins. No child. The bathroom, Rowan said. Empty. We moved through the apartment. Kitchen. Living room. Laundry closet. Front hall. The deadbolt was unlocked. Rowan stared at it. I locked that. You're sure? Yes. Her voice changed on the word. I opened the door and looked into the hallway. The elevator indicator showed the 1st floor. The stairwell door was closing. I ran. Rowan followed. The 4th floor landing smelled like old paint and someone's late dinner. I took the stairs 2 at a time, listening for movement below us. Sophie, Rowan called. Her voice echoed down the concrete shaft. Nothing answered. At the 2nd floor landing, Mrs. Alvarez opened her door. She wore a robe over flowered pajamas and held a wooden spoon in one hand. What happened? Sophie's gone, Rowan said. Mrs. Alvarez's expression sharpened immediately. How long? 2 minutes, maybe 3. I'll check downstairs. She disappeared inside long enough to grab her keys, then followed us. By the time we reached the lobby, the elevator doors were open. No one inside. The building's front door stood slightly ajar. Rain had started while we were upstairs. It was light just enough to make the sidewalk shine under the streetlights. Rowan stepped outside without shoes. I caught her arm. Put these on. I handed her the sneakers sitting on the lobby mat beneath the mailboxes. They are Mrs. Alvarez's. She'll forgive us. Mrs. Alvarez waved us away. Go, I'll check the laundry room and call the super. Rowan shoved her feet into the shoes. I looked both directions down the street. A convenience store on the corner. A bus stop across from the small park. Cars moving slowly through the wet intersection. Where would she go? I asked. I don't know. Yes, you do. Rowan looked at me like she wanted to hit me. She's 7. And she thinks in patterns. Where does she go when she is upset? She hides. Where? Under the kitchen table, behind the curtain in my room. The stairwell once. Outside? No. Someone she trusts nearby? Mrs. Alvarez. She's not there. Her teacher lives across town. Her grandmother? Rowan's face changed. Emily's mother lives in Norfolk. Did Sophie ever try to reach her? No. But she might know how. The bus. We both looked toward the stop across the street. The last city bus had already passed, but the route map was still lit inside the shelter. Rowan ran toward it. I followed, scanning the benches and shadows around the park. No Sophie. Only a man sleeping beneath a rain jacket and a woman staring at her phone near the curb. Rowan checked behind the shelter. Nothing. She thinks the bus goes to Norfolk, Rowan said. Does it? No. Emily used to bring her here when they visited. Sophie remembers waiting at this stop before going to the train station. So she might follow the route, or wait for a bus that is not coming. We moved down the sidewalk. Rowan was breathing too fast. I knew that sound. Not panic yet. The edge before it. Slow down, I said. Do not tell me to slow down. You're going to miss something. She is outside alone. I know. It is raining. I know. She thinks she is the reason I am losing the apartment. That is why we need to think. Rowan spun toward me. This is not one of your field problems. No. You cannot manage this by making a list and controlling the exits. No. Then stop sounding like you can. I held her gaze. I'm trying to keep you with me. That stopped her. The rain had darkened her hair around her face. Mrs. Alvarez's shoes were too large, and one heel kept slipping loose when she moved. I stepped closer. We find her together, I said. You know how she thinks. I can look where you are too scared to look. Her expressions cracked. Only for a second. Then she nodded. We kept moving. At the end of the block, the sidewalk split near an old brick church. Rowan stopped. A narrow covered bench sat beside the church fence. A small figure was curled beneath it. Purple pajamas. Bare feet. The child's backpack clutched against her chest. Sophie. Rowan crossed the distance so fast she nearly fell. Sophie looked up. Her face was wet from rain and tears. Rowan dropped to her knees and pulled her close. What were you thinking? The question came out sharper than she meant it to. Sophie flinched. Rowan immediately softened her grip. No, I'm sorry, you scared me. I was going to Grandma's. You cannot go to Norfolk alone. I know. You left the building. I know. You didn't have shoes. Sophie looked down. I forgot. Rowan closed her eyes and pressed her cheek against Sophie's hair. I crouched beside them. Sophie looked at me over Rowan's shoulder. You came too. Of course I did. She swallowed. Are you going to make us leave? Rowan pulled back. Sophie. She said the judge might not like you living with him. Rowan went still. Sophie looked at me, and she said she had to find a place before you came home. I could see Rowan preparing to explain. To soften. To protect me from the weight of whatever answer I gave. I spoke before she could. No. Sophie blinked. No what? You are not the reason Rowan packed those boxes. But she did it because of me. She did it because adults sometimes make scared decisions and call them plans. Rowan gave me a look. I kept going. You did not take anyone's home. You did not ruin anything. And nobody gets to decide you are a problem because your life got complicated. Sophie's eyes filled again. Do you want us there? The question was too large for the sidewalk. Too large for a child who needed an answer immediately. I looked at Rowan. She looked terrified, not because she expected me to say no, because she was afraid I would say yes for the wrong reason. I want you both safe tonight, I said, and tomorrow the adults are going to make decisions without blaming you for them. Sophie studied my face. That was not yes. No. Was it no? No. She frowned. You talk like Rowan. That is the worst thing anyone has said to me tonight. Rowan made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Sophie leaned back into her. I stood and took off my jacket. Rowan shook her head. She's soaked. So are you. I'm fine. You're wearing someone else's shoes. I wrapped the jacket around Sophie anyway. It swallowed her almost completely. She touched the sleeve. Does this mean I can keep it? No. Rowan lets me keep things. Rowan is why my room has been occupied. She said it was temporary. Apparently, that word has lost all meaning in our apartment. Sophie smiled weakly. I offered my hand. She took it. Rowan took the other. The three of us walked back through the rain, not holding hands like the drawing. Not quite. But close enough that I understood why Rowan had been afraid to let me see it. By the time we reached the building, Mrs. Alvarez was waiting in the lobby with a towel, a flashlight, and the expression of a woman prepared to personally discipline everyone involved. She wrapped Sophie first, then Rowan. Then she pointed the flashlight at me. You, she said, you look like trouble. I just got home. That is usually when trouble starts. Sophie laughed into the towel. Mrs. Alvarez looked satisfied. Good, she is laughing. Take her upstairs. Rowan crouched in front of Sophie. Can you walk? I walked there. That was not permission to do it again. I know. Do you? Sophie looked down. Rowan closed her eyes and took a breath. We are going to talk about this tomorrow. That means she is too tired to yell, I told Sophie. Rowan stood. That means I am choosing my words carefully. Same thing. Sophie reached for my hand again. This time, Rowan noticed. She did not say anything. Upstairs, we changed Sophie into dry pajamas and made hot chocolate because apparently children who escaped into the rain earned beverages with marshmallows. I objected on principle. No one listened. Sophie sat at the kitchen table with my jacket around her shoulders, watching Rowan stir the milk. You said it was not mine, she reminded me. It still isn't. It fits me now. It fits the chair. That counts. Rowan placed the mug in front of her. One drink, then bed. Can Caleb read the story? Rowan glanced at me. What story? The rabbit one. I have never read the rabbit one. You do voices. I looked at Rowan. She pretended to be deeply interested in the stove. How does she know that? You told me you used to read to your nieces. Once. You said the bear sounded Scottish. It was a creative decision. Sophie held out the book. 20 minutes later, the rabbit had a terrible Scottish accent. Sophie was asleep before the final page, and Rowan was standing in the doorway with her arms folded. That accent was offensive to at least 2 countries, she whispered. It worked. She was exhausted. The accent helped. We pulled the blanket up around Sophie. My jacket was still beneath her chin. I left it there. Rowan switched on the moon-shaped light and followed me into the hall. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The apartment felt different now. Not calmer exactly. More honest. There were no boxes I had not seen, no child hidden behind a closed door, no illusion that I had come home to the same life I had left. Rowan walked into the kitchen and poured the hot chocolate she had made for herself down the sink. You didn't drink it. I forgot. You forget food when you're scared. I was not scared. You ran outside without shoes. That was urgency. In borrowed footwear. She looked at me. I hate that you remember things. No, you don't. The answer came too quickly. We both heard it. Rowan turned away and started wiping the counter with a dish towel. There was nothing on the counter. I took the towel from her hand. Sit down. I'm fine. You have said that 4 times tonight. You counted? I lived through all 4. She gave me a tired version of her usual look, then sat. I took the chair across from her. For several seconds, we listened to the pipes in the wall and the rain tapping against the windows. Then Rowan said, "You should not have told her she could stay." I didn't. You told her she was not the problem. She isn't. That is not the same as saying she can stay here. I know. Do you? I leaned back. You think I'm going to make a promise because I feel guilty. I think you came home early, found a grieving child in your room, and immediately started trying to protect everyone. That is not a crime. No, it is what you do when you do not know what else to feel. The words were quiet. That made them harder to dismiss. What am I supposed to feel? I asked. Anything you want. Generous. But you do not get to build a future for Sophie because one terrible night made you feel needed. I'm not building anything. You said we would make decisions tomorrow. We will. There is no we. I stared at her. Rowan's face changed as soon as the words left her mouth. She looked down. That came out wrong. No, it came out honest. Caleb, you keep deciding where I belong in the sentence. I am trying to protect you. From what? From waking up in a month and realizing you came home to a family you never asked for. I looked towards Sophie's room, then back at Rowan. You think that is what this is. I think you are tired. I am. I think you missed home. I did. I think you missed me. There it was. Neither of us moved. Rowan's fingers tightened together on the table. I could have denied it. That would have been easier. It also would have been a lie. Yes, I said. Her eyes lifted to mine. I missed you. She looked away. Caleb. No, you do not get to bring it up and then hide from the answer. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Me saying I missed you. You saying it tonight. When would be acceptable? When you have slept, when the hearing is over, when Sophie is not 10 feet away, when I know you are talking to me and not reacting to everything that happened. I thought about you before any of this happened. She went still. I kept my voice low. I thought about calling you when things were bad, even when I had nothing to say. I saved the coffee packets you liked because I knew you would complain about them and drink them anyway. I counted how many nights were left because I wanted to come back to this apartment. Rowan's eyes had started to shine. I did not look away. I did not know about Sophie. I did not know about Emily. I did not know you were planning to leave, but I knew I wanted to come home to you." She pressed her lips together. "That does not mean you want this." "No." The answer surprised her. "It means I do not know yet." She looked almost relieved. Almost hurt. "I don't know what it would mean to help raise a 7-year-old, I continued. "I don't know what my schedule will be 6 months from now. I don't know whether Grant is trying to become a better father or trying to feel like one." Rowan watched me carefully. "But I know I do not want you making every decision based on what you think I can handle." Her gaze dropped to the table. "I could not ask you to stay. I am already here." "You know what I mean." "Yes." I reached across the table, but stopped before touching her hand. The space between us mattered. "So don't ask me for forever tonight," I said. "Ask me for tomorrow." Her eyes moved to mine. "What does tomorrow mean?" "It means you and Sophie stay here until the court tells us what comes after the hearing." "This is your apartment too." "Exactly. The home assessment could involve you. Then they can assess me. You could be deployed again. Then I tell them that. You might decide this is too much. Then I tell you that too." She looked at my hand, resting near hers. "You make honesty sound easy." "It isn't." No, it just hurts less than finding boxes in my bedroom." That earned a small laugh. She covered it with one hand. I finally let my fingers touch hers. Not a grip. Not a promise. Just contact. Rowan looked down. "I am scared you are confusing love with duty," she whispered. The word stayed between us. Love. Not affection. Not concern. Not roommates who had grown too close and said too little. I turned my hand until my palm faced hers. "I'm not asking you to trust what I feel tonight." Her fingers moved against mine. "What are you asking?" "Let me prove I can still feel it when nobody needs rescuing." She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, the fear was still there, but it was no longer the only thing. "All right," she said. "All right, what?" "You can come tomorrow." "To the hearing." "To the hallway." "I can work with that." "You are not wearing the uniform." "I own a shirt." "You own several. None of them fit properly." "That feels personal." "It is." Her hands stayed in mine. Neither of us mentioned it. A few minutes later, Rowan stood to check on Sophie. At the kitchen doorway, she looked back. "Caleb." "Yeah?" "Thank you for not saying you can fix this." "I can't." "I know." She nodded. That seemed to matter more than if I had promised otherwise. The next morning, I put on the least wrinkled civilian shirt I owned and followed Rowan into family court, knowing that the instinct I trusted most was the one she had asked me to resist. I would have to stand beside her without taking over. The courthouse smelled like floor polish, old paper, and coffee that had been sitting too long. Rowan checked Sophie in with a woman behind a glass window, while I stood 3 steps back and tried not to look like I was standing guard. I had changed into a dark blue shirt and civilian pants. Rowan had been right about the fit. The sleeves were too tight across my shoulders, and the collar kept catching against my neck. Sophie wore a yellow sweater and carried the repaired backpack. She had not spoken much during the drive. Every few minutes, she looked at Rowan as if checking that she was still there. Then she looked at me. She was asking the same question of a different person. Grant arrived 12 minutes before the hearing. I knew it was him before Rowan said his name. He walked in beside an older couple, who looked enough like him to be his parents. Grant was taller than I expected, clean-shaven, and dressed in a gray suit that had probably been bought for this morning. He stopped when he saw Sophie. Everything in his face changed. Not performance. Not strategy. Pain. Sophie moved behind Rowan's coat. Grant did not come closer. "Hi, Soph," he said. She looked at his shoes. His mother pressed both hands together against her chest. His father stared at the floor. Grant swallowed. "You got taller." Sophie did not answer. Rowan rested one hand on her shoulder. Grant looked at Rowan next. "Thank you for bringing her." Rowan's expression stayed flat. "She had to be here." "I know." The silence that followed was full of things they had already said somewhere else. Or should have. Grant's eyes moved to me. I watched him try to place who I was. "This is Caleb," Rowan said. Grant nodded once. "The roommate." The word landed with more weight than it deserved. I held out my hand. He looked at it, then shook it. His grip was firm. Mine was careful. "You just got back?" he asked. "Last night." "That is rough timing." "It has been a rough month." Grant released my hand. He glanced at Sophie again. "I'm not here to take her from people she knows." Rowan's shoulders tightened. "You filed for custody." "I filed because I'm her father." "You remembered that 6 weeks ago." His mother looked between them. "Grant is trying," she said. Rowan turned to her. "So am I." The older woman's face softened. "I know." That answer seemed to upset Rowan more than an argument would have. A clerk opened the courtroom door and called their names. The room was smaller than I expected. No jury box. No dramatic rows of spectators. Just a judge, a clerk, 2 tables, and several chairs along the wall. The home assessor sat near the front with a folder on her lap. Sophie was taken to a separate waiting room with a court advocate. She grabbed Rowan's hand when the advocate approached. "Do I have to?" "For a little while," Rowan said. "Are you coming back?" "Yes." Sophie looked at me. I did not make another promise. I just nodded. She let go. The hearing began with names, dates, and words that reduced 6 weeks of grief into neat categories. Temporary placement. Parental fitness. Home stability. Continuity of care. Grant answered first. He told the judge he had been sober for 19 months. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at an apartment complex. He had a 2nd bedroom ready. His parents lived 20 minutes away. He had missed years of Sophie's life and did not expect anyone to ignore that. "I failed her," he said. "I know saying that does not fix anything." His voice shook once, then settled. "I am asking for the chance to become her father again." The judge asked why he had waited until Emily died. Grant stared at his hands. "Because as long as Emily was alive, I could tell myself Sophie was better without me." The judge did not react. Grant continued. "That was easier than admitting I was afraid she would look at me and know I had left." Rowan looked down at the table. For the first time, I saw the problem the way a judge might. Grant was not easy to dismiss. He was late. He had caused damage. But he was standing there, naming it. Then Rowan spoke. She explained Sophie's routine. School at 8. Counseling on Thursdays. No tomato sauce because Sophie claimed it tasted angry. Nightlight on until she fell asleep. 2 calls a week with her grandmother. The way she woke from nightmares and needed someone to sit outside the bathroom door, not inside, because closed rooms had become difficult after the hospital. Rowan did not cry. She did not attack Grant. She did not try to make herself sound heroic. She talked about Sophie, as if the child's life mattered more than winning. The judge asked about housing. Rowan explained the apartment with the blue doors. Then the judge asked why she planned to move, when Sophie already had a bedroom in our apartment. Rowan's eyes moved toward me for half a second. My roommate had not agreed to this arrangement. Was he opposed? He did not know. The judge looked at me. That was my cue to stay quiet. I had promised the hallway. I was already farther inside than Rowan had asked. The home assessor opened her folder. The current apartment is appropriate, she said. The concern is future predictability. Mr. Hale is active duty military, and his availability may change. There it was. Not an accusation. A fact. The judge asked Rowan whether she intended to rely on me for childcare or financial support. No, she said. The answer came immediately. Something in my chest tightened. The judge looked at the rental information. Can you afford the proposed apartment? Yes. Without assistance? Yes. I knew that answer was technically true. I also knew what it would cost her. 5 extra shifts. Unstable childcare. No sleep. A plan that worked only if nothing went wrong. The judge asked whether anyone had additional information about the current home. The assessor glanced at me. Mr. Hale returned earlier than expected. I have not interviewed him. The judge looked in my direction. Are you willing to answer a few questions? Rowan turned. I saw the warning in her face. Do not perform. Do not rescue. Do not promise what you cannot give. Yes, Your Honor, I said. I stood beside the table. The judge asked how long Rowan and I had lived together. 22 months. Are you in a romantic relationship? The room became very still. No, Rowan said. The judge looked at me. I answered carefully. Not one we have defined. Rowan closed her eyes for 1 second. The judge made a note. Did you know Sophie would be living in the apartment? No. Do you object? No. Are you willing to provide child care? If Rowan asks and if I am available. Financial support? That would be a private decision between us. It should not be treated as part of Sophie's placement plan. The judge looked up. That answer seemed to matter. Do you consider yourself part of Sophie's support system? I thought about the drawing, the rain, her hand in mine. The fact that knowing a child for one night did not give me the right to claim a role in her life. I am someone she knows about, I said. I am someone Rowan trusts. Anything beyond that would need time. Rowan looked at me. The judge continued. What have you observed about Ms. Hayes as a caregiver? This was the part where I could have sold her. I could have turned Rowan into a speech. I could have listed every sacrifice and made her sound impossible to refuse. Instead, I told the truth. She keeps Sophie's routine even when she is exhausted. She does not speak badly about Grant in front of her. She has prepared to move, work extra shifts, and change her entire schedule so Sophie does not feel temporary. Grant looked down. I kept going. She also makes decisions alone when she is scared. That is not always helpful, but none of those decisions have been about making her own life easier. Rowan's eyes widened slightly. The judge asked whether I believed the current apartment was stable. I believe Rowan is stable. The apartment depends on both of us being honest about what we can promise. The judge studied me for a moment. Then she thanked me and told me to sit. The hearing lasted another 40 minutes. When the judge finally spoke, she did not give anyone what they wanted. Rowan's temporary guardianship would continue for 3 months. Grant would begin supervised visits. Both homes would be evaluated. Sophie would stay at her current school. The court would review the arrangement after counseling reports and additional interviews. Grant closed his eyes. Rowan's shoulders dropped. Not relief. Not yet. Just permission to keep going. Outside the courtroom, Grant stood near the vending machines while his parents spoke quietly with the assessor. Rowan waited for Sophie to return. I stood beside her. "You said we were not defined," she murmured. "We're not." "You could have said roommates." "I could have." She looked at me. "Why didn't you?" Before I could answer, Grant approached. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said to Rowan. "Good, but I want the visits. That is up to the court." "I know." He glanced at me, then back at her. "I also know you did not move because of the apartment." Rowan went still. Grant gave a tired, humorless smile. "You always leave first, when you think someone might choose you for the wrong reason." I looked at her. She did not deny it. Grant walked away before she could respond. The advocate brought Sophie through the door a minute later. Sophie ran straight to Rowan. While Rowan held her, I looked at the woman who had spent 6 weeks building a life designed to survive without me. I had thought she left because she believed I would say no. Now I understood she had been afraid I would say yes. Sophie did not ask what the judge had decided until we were halfway down the courthouse steps. Rowan had one hand on her shoulder and the other wrapped around the folder of court papers. Grant stood near the entrance with his parents, waiting for the supervised visit schedule. Sophie looked from him to Rowan. "Do I have to leave today?" "No," Rowan said. Sophie stopped walking. "Tomorrow?" "No." "Next week?" Rowan crouched in front of her. "You are coming home with me." Sophie looked at me. "To Caleb's apartment." Rowan hesitated. "1 second." That was all. Sophie saw it anyway. I sat on the step beside them. "To our apartment," I said. Rowan turned toward me. I kept my attention on Sophie. "You will sleep in your room tonight. The rabbit will continue occupying mine without permission. He likes your pillow. He has terrible judgment." Sophie leaned against Rowan. "What happens after 3 months?" "The judge checks again," Rowan said. "And then? We make another plan." "Are plans bad?" Rowan glanced at me. "Some are. Some are just scared decisions wearing a clipboard," I said. Sophie considered that. "Did Rowan tell you to say that?" "No, Rowan would use a better word than clipboard. I would use a less ridiculous sentence." Sophie's mouth lifted. Then she looked back toward Grant. "Do I have to see him?" Rowan followed her gaze. "You will see him with another adult there. What if I don't want to?" "You can tell the counselor how you feel." "That isn't no." "No," Rowan said gently. "It isn't." Sophie stared at the courthouse doors. Grant noticed. He did not wave. He only stood there and let her look. After a moment, Sophie turned away. "I'm hungry." It was the most ordinary thing anyone had said all morning. Rowan stood. There is a diner across the street. Do they have pancakes? It is 11:30. That was not my question. We crossed at the light. Sophie walked between us, holding Rowan's hand but not mine. I was glad. Trust had come quickly enough already. Inside the diner, she ordered pancakes shaped like a bear and then complained that the ears were unequal. Rowan drank coffee with both hands around the mug. I watched the tension leave her slowly. Not because the problem was solved. Because for 90 days, Sophie knew where she would sleep. Sometimes that was the only victory available. Sophie asked to use the restroom after eating half one pancake and all the whipped cream. Rowan walked her to the door, waited outside, then returned to the booth when Sophie insisted she was old enough to wash her hands alone. We had perhaps 2 minutes. Rowan folded the paper sleeve from her straw into smaller and smaller squares. You should not have said, our apartment. It is our apartment. You know what Sophie heard. She heard that she has somewhere to sleep. She heard that we are staying together. We are staying in the same apartment. That is not what she meant. I leaned forward. Then we tell her the truth as it changes. Rowan stopped folding. You cannot treat this like an open-ended arrangement. I'm not. What are you treating it like? A choice. Whose? All of ours. Her eyes hardened. Sophie does not get to choose whether you take on responsibility for her. No. And I am not letting you make that decision because you missed me. I know. Do you? Yes. She looked unconvinced. I took the rental brochure from the folder beside her. The blue doors looked less hopeful in daylight. More like peeling paint and a playground built too close to the parking lot. You have 3 options, I said. Rowan stared at me. That sounds ominous. You can stay in the apartment with Sophie without owing me anything. Her expression changed. I continued before she could interrupt. You can move to the place with the blue doors, and I will help only when you ask. Caleb. Or we can admit this is more than roommates and try to build something carefully. She went very still. No instant family, I said. No promises I cannot make. No pretending deployment will never happen again. We take 1 week at a time and tell each other when something changes. Rowan looked down at the brochure. You make it sound reasonable. It is deeply inconvenient. That part I believe. You also do not get to choose the first option because you think it is safer for me. And you do not get to choose the third because you think it is safer for us. Agreed. She looked at me. Do you know how difficult this will be? Yes. No, you don't. Neither do you. Her mouth tightened. I reached across the table and covered the brochure with my hand. But you already decided difficulty was worth it for Sophie. That is different. Why? Because she needs me. I don't. The words landed wrong. Rowan's face closed. I turned my hand over on the table. I mean, I can leave, I said. I can make other choices. Staying would be one. She looked at my open palm. I do not know how to trust that. Then don't yet. Her eyes lifted. Stay long enough to find out whether I mean it. She studied me for several seconds. The diner moved around us. Dishes clattered behind the counter. Someone laughed near the register. A coffee machine hissed. Nothing paused for the answer. Rowan placed her hand in mine. Not carefully. Not halfway. Her fingers closed around mine, like she had finally stopped trying to preserve an exit. "I want the third option," she said. My chest tightened. "With the weekly honesty meetings. I already regret this. With the possibility that I burn grilled cheese. You are banned from grilled cheese. With the rabbit continuing his illegal occupation. That is between you and the rabbit." I smiled. She tried not to. Failed. I leaned closer, slowly enough that she had room to change her mind. Rowan looked at my mouth, then at my eyes. "This is a terrible time," she whispered. "We can wait." I know. She kissed me anyway. It was not dramatic. No one in the diner noticed. Her thumb pressed against my jaw, and my hand tightened around hers. It felt less like starting something, and more like finally stopping an argument we had been having without words for almost 2 years. The restroom door opened. We separated before Sophie reached the table. She looked at both of us. Then at our hands, still joined between the coffee mugs. "Did I miss something?" "No," Rowan said. "Yes," I said. Rowan kicked me under the table. Sophie climbed into the booth. "Can we get dessert?" "You just ate whipped cream for lunch," Rowan said. That was part of the bear. I looked at Rowan. She makes a strong argument. "You are not helping. I have been officially warned against taking charge." Sophie raised her hand. "I vote for pie." Rowan looked at the two of us and shook her head. But she was smiling when she ordered 1 slice and 3 forks. 9 months later, the drawing was still taped to the wall. The paper had curled at the corners, and the green marker Sophie had used for my uniform had faded where sunlight reached it in the afternoons. We had moved it once. Sophie noticed within 6 minutes. So it went back above her desk, where all 3 stick figures continued, holding hands beneath a sun that looked slightly dangerous. The room had changed around it. The office shelves were gone. My field manuals had moved into a cabinet in the living room. Sophie's books now covered 2 walls, organized according to a system no adult understood. The stuffed rabbit had officially relocated from my bed. Unofficially, I still found him there at least twice a week. Espionage, I called it. Sophie called it visiting. Rowan called it losing an argument to a toy. The court kept Rowan's temporary guardianship in place through March. That did not mean Grant disappeared. It meant he had supervised visits at first, then afternoon visits without an observer once Sophie's counselor thought she was ready. He showed up late twice. He missed 1 visit entirely and called before the next one to apologize directly to Sophie. She did not forgive him right away. Rowan did not make her. Grant kept coming. Some weeks, that was the most anyone could honestly say. He was learning that becoming a father again was not one large gesture. It was remembering which library books Sophie had already read, bringing the correct cereal, and listening when she said she did not want to call him dad yet. I respected him more when he stopped asking for credit. Rowan and I learned something similar about each other. The third option had sounded simple in the diner. It was not. There were night shifts, school pickups, therapy appointments, military training schedules, and one memorable Tuesday when all 3 of us forgot Sophie had to bring a model volcano to class. We built it at midnight with cardboard, flour, and a bottle of red food coloring that permanently stained the kitchen counter. Sophie received a B because the volcano leaned to one side. She said it looked realistic. Rowan agreed. I suspected they had formed an alliance. There were weeks when I slept at the apartment every night. There were weeks when I left before sunrise and returned after Sophie was in bed. Once, I was sent away for 12 days with less than 48 hours' notice. Rowan did not say. I knew this would happen. I did not promise it would be the last time. We sat at the kitchen table, opened the calendar, and worked out who would handle school pickup, who could cover emergencies, and when I could call. Sophie listened from the hallway. This time, we invited her into the room. She asked whether I was coming back. Yes, I said, on the 22nd. What if it changes? Then I tell you. What if you can't? Then Rowan tells you what she knows, and neither of you pretends guessing is the same as having an answer. She thought about that. Then she wrote the date on the calendar herself. I came back on the 22nd. Not because love made the army predictable. Because when I could keep a promise, I did. When I could not make one, I stopped pretending certainty was kindness. Rowan had been right about one thing. I had not known what it meant to help raise a child. I still did not completely. I knew how Sophie liked her sandwiches cut. I knew she hated being told to calm down, but responded well when someone sat beside her without speaking. I knew grief returned in strange places. A song in a grocery store. A jacket that still smelled faintly like her mother's perfume. A school form asking for a parent's signature. On those days, I did not try to fix her. Rowan taught me that. I taught Rowan to ask before deciding she was alone. She was still bad at it. I was still bad at waiting to be asked. Our weekly honesty meetings became less formal after the first month. Sometimes they happened over coffee. Sometimes in the car outside Sophie's school. Once, they happened while Rowan stood on a chair trying to change a smoke detector battery and refused to admit the chair was unstable. I need help, she finally said. I held the chair. That sounded painful. Do not make me take it back. I would never. We argued. We apologized. We kissed in the kitchen when Sophie was not watching, and occasionally when she was, which always produced a dramatic groan. We did not call ourselves a family for a while. The word felt too large. Then Sophie used it on a school project without asking permission, and neither of us corrected her. The final guardianship order arrived on a Thursday afternoon. I was making pancakes for dinner because Rowan was working late, and Sophie had declared breakfast foods emotionally necessary. The first batch burned. The second was raw in the middle. The third looked like something a person could legally serve. Someone knocked twice, then used a key. Rowan walked in wearing navy scrubs, her hair falling out of its knot and a large envelope held against her chest. For 1 second, she looked exactly as she had the night I came home. Tired. Afraid. Holding a piece of paper that could change everything. Sophie came running from the living room. Is that it? Rowan nodded. Sophie stopped before reaching her, suddenly cautious. Did we win? Rowan crouched. The judge says you stay with me. Sophie stared at her. For how long? As long as you need. Sophie threw her arms around Rowan's neck. Rowan closed her eyes and held on. I turned back toward the stove because some moments did not need another person entering them. Also, the pancake was smoking. A minute later, Sophie took the envelope to her room because she wanted to put the papers beside the drawing. Rowan stayed in the kitchen. She looked at the blackened pancake in the sink. You have not improved. I have become consistent. That is not the same thing. It is in some professions. She stepped closer. The same envelope that had once been crushed in her hand now rested loosely against her side. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then shook her head, then laughed at herself. "I think so. That is convincing. I spent 9 months preparing for bad news. And now I do not know what to do with relief." I took the envelope from her and placed it on the counter. "You could eat a pancake. Is that the good batch?" "There is no good batch." She leaned into me. I wrapped my arms around her and felt her finally let the weight go. My bedroom had been the first thing I lost when I came home. Sophie needed it more, so I moved into the smaller room and learned to stop thinking of space as something taken from me. The room became hers. The apartment became ours. And the life waiting for me after deployment looked nothing like the one I had imagined on the flight home. It was louder, harder, less certain. It also had a child's drawing on the wall, Rowan's coffee beside mine, and a stuffed rabbit that still violated boundaries. Rowan pulled back and picked up the envelope. Then she handed it to me. "This time," she said, "you were supposed to see it."